Hi guys, my name's Seb Tudor, I'm the man on the Silver Mountain, and welcome back. Now, today, I kind of want to... I'm going to just keep building this stuff, because even though I don't need to, because the Purge has been downscaled, I want to, because there are still things that I feel I can learn from doing this, and on top of that, it's just fun. But whilst I'm doing so, I kind of want to also talk to you guys about some stuff that we've heard Funcom talk about, but that hasn't actually been in any of the new stuff that they've mentioned so far specifically. So one of the things that stands out that I want to touch on, something I was actually looking quite forward to, is the corpse locker, which is a buildable piece, seemingly, from what's been said. What are you doing there? A buildable piece that ultimately will be a case of you throw corpses in it, and then after you've thrown some corpses in it, then you can fire them over the walls of enemy encampments and things using the trebuchet. Now, obviously, with the trebuchet being much more of a PvP item, it makes sense that that would maybe be still on the agenda somewhere, maybe coming in with the jungle biome as one of the new items and buildables and things like that they've mentioned as well. In addition to things like the map room and other stuff like that they're continuing to add. But then, I was missing one over there. But then on top of that, the thing that stands out to me about it is that with the corpse locker, it wasn't so much just a case of this is a thing for PvP that will allow you to do it. It's a case of, well, in terms of traps, in terms of globes, the offensive globe types are the ones that are either explosive, or they are the ones that are kind of poisonous, gaseous. And it's a case of going, okay, so we've got your explodey orbs, or the equivalent thereof, for the trebuchet already. We've got the demon fire barrage thing, which is basically just collections of explosive jars put together and then launched at the enemy. So we've got those. We know what they are. We know that they're there. But then we don't have an equivalent for the stuff that we've got otherwise. So we don't have the equivalent of a gas trap or a gas orb for trebuchets, which, if you've got the trebuchet normal solid projectiles as being for taking down walls, and then you've got the much more effective version for... Why are you not? Are you doing the thing again? Yeah, you are. Piece of crap. But then you've got the more effective version for taking down structures and things in terms of just exploding them, blowing them up. Is that right? Because it worries me that we've not heard some more about it, considering that it is just an item, a buildable that has been mentioned. We've seen the concept art for it. We've seen the other stuff for it. The thing is, if we don't get that for kind of a disease poison kind of effect for sieging, then which is much more in the way of kind of individual crowd control, taking out people's thralls, taking out people's encampments with as little resistance as possible. It's kind of a case of, well, I want that. I would like to see that, even if it's for much more PvP purposes, because the various bits and pieces that we're going to get as a PvE threat don't apply as much to using a trebuchet. Although at some point I'm sure I will find more ways to attack people with trebuchets. Even in PvE, it's a case of, well, if we've got those things, where's the rest? And so I'm hoping that it's just like disease and big sweaty lockers full of corpses. It seems very much like a kind of more jungly thing than anything else, because doing it in the desert, you would have a lot of the moisture that you would need for bacteria and stuff to get drawn out, to make them most concentrated and most potent. I don't think you would get quite the same effect out in the sandy, dry desert. But then, you know, you'd maybe expect it up north, but then you would also potentially have the issue of up north, where up here, you know, where you would either get it decaying too quickly, or potentially even getting either washed away in the rains that are further south, or just freezing up here, in which case the disease and the nastiness that you would be trying to promote just wouldn't form. Hold on. So, you know, I'm kind of worried that due to the way that the game is changing towards launch, even if they manage to get some of those other features that were mentioned prior that have so far been canned, you know, even if they end up getting to completing those things, those parts of the project that have so far been scrapped, you know, I'm kind of hoping that this stuff doesn't get just left out and forgotten, because there are still people especially in PvP, that make very good use of the siege equipment. You know, I've in the couple of times that I've actually in my own time jumped onto a server and whatever else, probably not always been a PvP one, because, you know, I've mentioned to you guys before how I'm not the biggest fan of PvP in the world. But as a result, you know, it's even on those servers where you've got limited PvP, or it's mostly roleplay, but you've still got the PvP enabled for whatever reason, you know, for the sake of realism or drama or whatever, then, you know, you've still got people making very good use of the trebuchet as it stands. And again, another piece that was mentioned at one point was possibly a ballista, which I don't think we ever saw any concept art for, or ever really heard of it being tested or worked on, really. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, it would be really cool to have a ballista that was more directional, but did a hell of a lot less damage, and was more just like an emplacement to protect your base with. Yeah, that would be cool. That would be interesting. It would add another, especially with the combat changes, it would add a new element to combat that we so far haven't been able to see or take advantage of or use. So, you know, I'm interested to see how that is. Now, I know that the combat changes have been on test live, and that they said that they are making some changes, some balancing. They've been messing around with hyper armor for NPCs as well, to have unblockable attacks, or uninterruptible attacks rather, not unblockable by default. You know, they've been talking about those kind of things, and that all sounds really interesting. But I'm just hoping that the other, like, kind of more structural siege-based parts of the entire endeavor don't get forgotten in favor of this, because I don't feel like it would be difficult to go, we're going to have a new ammunition type for the trebuchet, this is how you make it, and then on top of that, having just a larger, more potent form of the, or in fact, do you know what would be, that would make it really interesting to me, would be if you made it a disease-based system. And now, I've talked about Guild Wars 1 in the past. I don't know how many of you have actually kind of played the game, but disease in that game was kind of interesting, because it was a status effect that when you bumped into someone of, relatively speaking, the same species as you, who was carrying disease, if you didn't have it, then you would afterwards. And you'd need to purge the status effect to kind of be free of it, to be able to function without it, to stop the health degen. And so we've already got the poison effects at the moment in the game that are, they work very effectively. The gas orbs are one of my favourites personally, but obviously I sometimes walk into my own cloud and hurt myself, but that's entirely my own fault. But then the stuff that I would be interested in seeing would be seeing the various bits and pieces that the trebuchet can already do be taken advantage of with not necessarily a larger, more damaging, or more potent cloud than your average gas orb, but if you did that, but then the thing that makes it more potent and the thing that makes it more of an area of effect thing that worthy of a piece of trebuchet ammo would be that the status effect can be conferred. So it would be a case of, you have this initial explosion of maybe a slightly larger kind of diameter, larger radius area of effect from the blast. From whatever it is, when it impacts, it causes a maybe slightly larger area of effect, and then subsequent to that, anyone that's infected by it, as long as they have it on them, then potentially the next person that they come across who doesn't have it gets it. For the same for a fresh duration. So potentially you can make that with a few well-placed shots. You could infect everybody, and anybody who manages to purge the condition could be reinfected. It becomes a crowd-controlling thing as much as it becomes a damaging thing. But the damage isn't outside of what we've already got in terms of the gas orbs, where it's a fair amount of damage. It's fairly nasty to get caught in one of the clouds from a gas orb, but it's not a case of being completely ground into the dirt by it. But also they are removing innate health regen unless you've taken a perk, which again, potentially the disease idea would mean that you would have more reason to take that perk, as if everybody isn't going to take that perk anyway already. But then you've not just got those the normal incentives. You actually have a strategic incentive for, if you are going into a base that you're attacking with gas, then you want to have your people with health regen, so that when they get hit with the poison, maybe it doesn't do as much to them. Maybe you get one tick of damage and then one tick of regen. It would all be an interesting way that they could balance that out and make it work, which I'd be really interested to see how it all panned out personally. But again, it's a case of going, there's a lot of stuff that's been kind of talked about, that they've actually explicitly said, yes, we've got this, no, we've not got that, and it's a case of kind of me going, okay, but there are other things that you've talked about which you've not mentioned since. Could we get some clarity, just a little bit of clarity, please? Because again, they've mentioned about having a kind of pack thrall, so that you can bring a thrall with you with a much larger inventory, so that you can carry more, because that was one of the big goals of mounts in particular. I think it was the camel in particular that was supposed to be the biggest kind of caravan-like mount that they were talking about at one point, which would have you give you that extra inventory to draw people along. Not draw people along, to carry more stuff with you as you went along. So it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out, because my biggest issue with it being a thrall rather than a mount is more that, like, we've seen that thralls can be incredibly dense, or that they just break when you try and take them places. And so with the breaking when you're trying to take them places, or them getting lost, them getting stuck, if you've piled a whole load of useful stuff on your thrall, and then he gets stuck somewhere, or he can't follow you to the place that you actually want to go to, then I feel like you might be running into a little bit of an issue in the long run. If you've got these thralls that you've introduced for this specific purpose, and you want to tackle what's going on with them and how they're functioning, then it might be a bit more hassle than was originally thought. But I don't know. There are other things as well. I'm sure that there are kind of elements of the farming system, for instance, that they've mentioned a couple of times, that they've gone, oh yes, we've still got farming that's going to be coming in, so whoops, didn't mean to do that. So you can grow your own food, make yourself more self-sufficient as a whole. But in addition to that, it's a case of going, right, so what about the things that you've talked about more specifically? Because so far what you've shown to us in some of these things have been kind of grow beds. Great. What else is that actually going to entail? There's a lot of stuff that's been kind of left up in the air after these last few announcements, which, it doesn't bother me because they've covered the majority of stuff that they've talked about. But I'm still sat there going, yeah, but what about the other thing? What about that other thing that sounded really good? Tell me about the other thing. Especially in regards to things like the corpse locker, in regards to some of the other items that we might be getting. I'm interested in seeing those things because I want to see what we can do with them. Some of the best parts of this game, some of the most fun parts of this game, some of the things that you guys have enjoyed most seeing me do have been like me testing the trebuchet by firing myself at a wall, whether that's because you don't like me very much and want me to fire myself at a wall, or whether it was just because it was a fun video that we it was something that we were able to look into together and have a laugh with. I'm still interested in what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, whether or not it will allow for more interesting and creative elements of play that so far we've not touched on. They highlighted the Pippi mod in one of the last dev streams, and the Pippi mod looks great. But again, some of those tools, they said that they wanted to hire the guy, but they couldn't for very valid reasons. But at the same time, it's a case of going, yeah, so we know that some of this stuff, like for instance, there is a mod for a pack thrall to carry stuff for you anyway already. So the fact that you're now making your own version, adding this into the game, all that kind of stuff, that's great. It means that in theory it'll run better, run more smoothly, function better because you're going to be kind of working it all out. They've talked about the AI and how the AI in what we're playing at the moment is like 2 or 3 development builds out of date or something like that. So I'm looking forward to seeing those things and how we're going to be able to see the difference in what we're fighting and how we're fighting it. Especially for things like the Purge, considering that they've downscaled it from large armies to kind of raiding warbands or packs of animals. I'm interested in seeing how significant the AI is going to be, because if you've downsized it from a big threat just because there are so many arms flailing at you to being a lesser threat, but the threat is not just lessened because there are few of them, but also lessened because you've got these this dumb AI that can't actually like work out how it's supposed to be fighting you or what it's supposed to be doing, then it's a bit more taxing to play, because it becomes a threat that becomes so inconsequential after the first couple of times you come across it, which no one wants. You know, in a survival game like this, where you know you either need to be under pressure, or you need to have intelligent enemies. And when I say under pressure, I mean in terms of like lots of stuff going on, lots of things kind of trying to kill you all at once. And if you don't have that, then you're going to need to have then you're going to need to have a lot more in the way of intelligent enemies that can outthink you potentially. Like, I would love to be in a position where I've built this huge base that I'm building right now, with its walls made of foundations, because foundations seem to have some of the highest HP values for building pieces, from what I've been able to see in terms of, you know, me stood there blowing stuff up. I'd love to be able to go, do you know what, I built this huge base with these huge impenetrable walls that will be eventually lined with roofs and fences and things like that to prevent annoyances from getting in, as it were. But whilst I'm building, whilst I'm doing all of this stuff, and it's kind of standing out that I'm able to get all of this stuff done, and you're going to have these very well laid out defenses with these big walls and these multiple curtain walls, like the other wall that's going to be over there and probably up there a bit as well. You know, whilst I'm planning all of that out and I'm able to do all of these interesting things with it, if the enemies are just going to run up to the wall and faceplant the wall, then that's not a challenge, that's an annoyance, because it means when I want to leave, I'm going to have to just blow my way through them all. It means my thralls might be inconvenienced, because they might get killed a bit more often. You know, it's not going to be anything else that's going to be particularly taxing to me as kind of the player playing the game. And so, you know, one of the things that I'm hoping for is that if they're going for your AI that's better, I'm hoping that it's going to be an AI that is smart enough to keep us on our toes, even whilst we're kind of doing stuff and working through things and able to build these huge structures. Granted, as people have said before, you know, that wouldn't be realistic for an online game. It's like, yeah, probably not. But then again, the purge isn't going to be your biggest issue in those situations. Other players are. But in the single player game, which is probably where people are going to look to play the story most, and do more of the stuff that Funcom is actually laying out for us more. In those situations, if you don't have kind of at least moderately potent AI, then you're going to be running, you know, players are going to be running into just nothing. There's going to be nothing to keep them on their toes, and nothing to strive against in the day-to-day, because obviously, you know, we're going to have a new biome, well, two new biomes arguably, because we've got the volcano and then we've got the jungle. We've got the various other dungeons and things, but then once the game's fully launched, and once everything has been done to kind of ensure that we've got, you know, we've built all of the coolest equipment, we've done all of the coolest things. Yeah, we've got degradation on buildings, and we've got the degradation on weapons and so on, but that's not going to really slow us down all that much. You know, we're not going to we're not going to run into problems like, I don't know, our base is under threat to an extent that we actually need to pay attention to what's going on. You know, it's always going to be a case of our base may very well be under threat, but it's the stupid AI, so we're going to just deal with them unless they do something solid. So the AI that we've seen them showcase of the new stuff, of the new combat AI, was enough to kill Jens, the community manager. but it's again, it's still a case of like, okay, so it killed the community manager. Good job, AI. But at the same time, you know, what were the settings set to for that to transpire? Was he at a disadvantage to the AI already, and whatever else? You know, there are a lot of factors that we weren't necessarily privy to when it came to what was going on in that scenario that we witnessed. And so I'm still sat here kind of going, I want that to be better, and I want there to be other factors to be involved, which again could very well mean the other pieces of siege equipment that we've heard talked about, or other systems that they've mentioned but haven't been introduced yet, which, you know, we're waiting on in terms of things like farming and stuff like that. And I know that we've only, in theory, got it's March now, so we've got 2 months to wait. But you know, it's just, since they went into such detail and they've been so transparent with what they're doing, how they're doing it, which parts we're getting, which parts we won't, why we aren't getting them, considering that's all stuff that's been talked about and worked on and discussed, and I'm falling off stuff again, considering that's all been out in the open, you know, and we've been able to enjoy the commentary and the straightforward nature of Funcom's approach to it. Like, again, I'm still very much kind of almost amazed, actually, at just how transparent Funcom has decided to become of late, considering that even on their YouTube channel, where they've been doing their, you know, putting up their on-demand live streams and things like that post their Twitch debut, as it were, they've been making sure that they've been posting stuff like their financial presentations per quarter, or they've been putting stuff forward in regards to like, I think what was it? It wasn't just their finance presentation. There was another presentation up there as well, which, you know, you wouldn't get EA or any other large studio like that putting anything out like that, because that's the kind of stuff they hide from people, because, you know, if people knew about it, then they'd be pissed off about it, as we've been seeing in more recent stuff that I've also been talking about on the channel. So I'm impressed with the level of transparency we've gotten, but at the same time, I'm still like, and I don't think they've done it maliciously. I'm going to say that right now. I don't think that we've had omissions from stuff that's been said prior to now, out of, oh, well, we can't tell them that because X, Y, and Z. I think it's just a case of there's a lot to talk about, and as a result of there being a lot to talk about, they've missed a couple of things. That's fine, but, you know, I'd just like to hear more about some of those things, because some of those things were the interesting elements that I was kind of looking forward to. You know, one of the things that I would love to do at some point is kick off a series when the servers and things are maybe a little bit more stable, when the official ones are more stable. I'd love to go and do a series where we literally just take a look at life and the ecosystems of the various official servers and how we can kind of make the most of them, you know, because I'd love to be able to just be like, okay, so all those things, all that testing, all those bits and pieces that I did in single player to test the stuff that's, you know, coming out, and as it comes out, we've been able to test stuff out and try things, and, you know, can I fire myself with a trebuchet? Can I do X, Y, and Z with this new part of this system? Can we take thralls into dungeons? You know, with all of that kind of stuff, I'd love to be able to then go, okay, so yeah, you guys have complained about, oh, well, that's not realistic, that's not going to be able to do X, Y, and Z. Well, fine, so let's take the principles that we've learned, building methods, for instance, like what I'm trying to work out now, building in water, dealing with all of these other things, how to manage kind of bottlenecks and stuff like that. Can we make use of that in a PvP environment? Or at the very least on an official server that provides PvP? Be it either a roleplay server or otherwise, you know, I wouldn't as I've said, I probably wouldn't necessarily want to spend a huge amount of time on the PvP side of things, just because it's not really my game so much. But at the same time, I'd happily jump in and take a look at stuff for a little bit, just to see what we could make work. So, you know, it's stuff that I'm interested in looking into, and there are things that I would love to get a little... I'm not necessarily... I didn't want to put that there. I wanted to put... No. Please. I stand with my back over here. Can we... Oh, well, there's that. But... yeah, I'd love to see that. So I know that this has been a bit more of a kind of rambly video again, but it was something that after my last couple of videos where, you know, we've done a bit more exploring and we've done a bit more experimentation, discussing of the community letters and the releases that they've put out to us to let us know what's going on. You know, I was just sat there going, well, what do I do a video on this week? What can I have fun with today? And then going, do you know what? Whilst we're waiting for the combat system, there's actually a lot of stuff that we have still been told, but that we've not been hearing a lot about afterwards. You know, it's stuff that's just kind of gone AWOL from what's been discussed and what's been talked about. And I'm sure there's a part of it that's just like, well, yeah, we've not talked about it because we don't want to tell you everything. You know, whenever we go, hey, look at the new jungle biome, look at all the new cool stuff that comes with it, we want to show off that cool stuff when it happens. We don't want to start just throwing information at you kind of for the sake of it, just to appease one curious person or a handful of curious people. You know, there has to be something surprising that you guys, you know, for you guys to enjoy when it comes out. So, you know, it's I can understand why it's probably not come up. It's probably either not come up because it's been omitted from discourse purposely because they want to give us a surprise at some point. You know, the hype train and everything else around any game is built off the surprises that kind of players that are actually looking forward to the game then get. So, and this is part of the downfall of all manner of games, because they promise too much from their hype train, or they then provide too many surprises, or they kind of get to a point whereby it's a lot of cool stuff that they show off, but then the stuff that they don't talk about is actually the stuff that probably should have been paid attention to and has been missed entirely, and the game is worse off for it. You know, there's a lot of that kind of thing, and so, you know, I'm a little worried that maybe there are a few things that I was looking forward to that won't turn up in the game as it goes. But considering they've been like, there are going to be new armors, there are going to be new structures, you know, I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt for the moment. But I just wanted to voice my thoughts, considering that was just a thing that sprang out to me. You know, I read the community letter again kind of the other day that came out on Wednesday, and it was a case of going, okay, yeah, there's some cool stuff in there, like the pack thrall and some other bits and pieces that we've not really heard about so far, and some other bits and pieces that they're working on in regards to animals and animal behaviors and all that kind of stuff, you know. And it's a shame that we won't get pets in any form for launch, because again, you guys know how much I was looking forward to getting hold of a panther and a kind of saber-tooth cat thing, as and when I was able to do so. But, you know, it's one of those things. I'm not going to be getting those at launch from the sounds of things, and so as a result, yeah, if I'm not getting those at launch, fine, I can cope. But there are still some things that just haven't been talked about that I'd still just like to know if they're coming or not, Funcom. So otherwise, we've got the dev stream tonight where they've said that Joel Bylos isn't going to be there. It's going to be Oscar and Jens instead, talking about, again, some of the combat system stuff, some of the other stuff that's been missing. But otherwise, guys, thank you very much for watching. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What are things that have been mentioned a while ago that haven't been talked about since that you're looking forward to? But anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the video tomorrow. Take care. Thank you very much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, then please drop us a like, share this video, and subscribe for more. And I'll see you in the video tomorrow. Take care.